If you hear any background noises, please ignore it. I'm just recording a video because I wanted to record today. I wanted to record the second channel. I've actually been doing these videos where I just sit down in front of the camera and just chill, talk. They've been doing pretty good, so I might as well record more. Today, I'm here to talk about James Harden. Well, not really just James Harden. Really, you saw the title, the Player Empowerment Movement. I think the title of this is going to be something like, a conversation needs to be had about the Player Empowerment Movement. And it's just because there's a lot been going on this season, or off season, I should say. And most recently, the biggest thing that's been talked about is the James Harden situation. James Harden and Daryl Morey have had some conflicts, and it's a bit of turmoil in Philadelphia right now. Nobody really knows what exactly is going to happen. Because going back last year, James Harden took a pay cut to stay on the team, and eventually there was some sort of promise. See, I don't know the full details of the situation, so I'm not going to be completely accurate with everything. But there was some sort of promise where that was made this offseason that I know for sure that James Harden would take the money, but he wanted Daryl Morey to trade him to a different team. That's the only reason he took the money, because he accepted his player option, and many people expected him to decline and go to some other team, but he actually accepted and re-signed. But the promise was that Daryl Morey would trade into another team and that he would be playing in a different city by October. So, with that promise in mind, Daryl Morey went to free agency, everything going on, and James Harden's still on the team, and he requested a trade. Everybody knew. So people are thinking, oh, he wants to go to this team and this team, blah, blah, blah. Trade talks, blah, blah, blah. And then a few days ago, it might have been like a week ago at this point, the Philadelphia 76ers officially closed trade talks on James Harden. And later on, the same day, James Harden says, Daryl Morey is a liar, and I never want to play for an organization that he's a part of. That might have been the exact quote. I don't know if these are that exact words, but that's pretty much the gist of what he said. So this whole situation is going on, and I'm thinking this is a tough situation for both sides. Because for Harden, it's true. He was lied to. Daryl Morey made a promise, and he broke that promise. He didn't trade Harden. At least he didn't trade him yet. And he closed trade talks on him when he would promise to trade him. So I can understand why James Harden is mad in this situation. But then from Daryl Morey's side of things, it's pretty hard to trade a disgruntled star, because James Harden's first choice, everybody knew, it was the Clippers. The Clippers, though, already got two guys on max deals, and the next best guy with, like, the next biggest contract they have is, I think, Norman Powell for $20 million. And then aside from that, they don't have much left to give to the Sixers, because they traded a good amount of their picks to get Paul George on the team. They just don't have any young pieces. They have Brandon Boston Jr. and Terrence Mann, but they don't want to give up Terrence Mann, so he's off the table. You have Brandon Boston Jr., Norman Powell, I don't know, Nicholas Batum. Like, what's the trade gonna be if James Harden gets traded to the Clippers? And James Harden doesn't want to go anywhere else. So other teams aren't really willing to take a 1-year rental. I think it's a 1-year deal. A 1-year rental of James Harden. I don't even know if it's a 1-year deal for sure, though. They're not really willing to take that James Harden gamble if he doesn't really want to be there. Because we've seen James Harden with other teams. When he didn't want to be on the Rockets, you saw all the memes, the James Harden fat suit, and he forced his way out of Houston, and then he got to the Nets. And then he played for the Nets, didn't work out. He forced his way out of Brooklyn. It was more to the Ben Simmons thing. There's a whole other situation with Ben Simmons, and that also has to do with Daryl Morey. But James Harden, going back to Daryl Morey, who was his former GM in Houston. So now you're thinking, oh, James Harden and Daryl Morey back together is going to be perfect, right? And now all of a sudden, the tables are turning, and James Harden and Daryl Morey all of a sudden don't like each other anymore. So it's it's an interesting situation. And it made me think about player empowerment because, of course, because we saw in this situation, James Harden wanted to go to the Clippers, but if he, it pretty much puts the Sixers in a tough spot because if he doesn't go to the Clippers, where else does he go? If the Clippers don't have the right trade package, where else is he supposed to go? So, because not many other teams are wanting to take that gamble, like I said. So it's an interesting situation. And when you think about player empowerment, I said this for like the third time this video, but going back to when it really all started, I mean, it probably could have started before this with the Celtics big three, everybody talking about super teams and all that. But really, I think everybody, or a good amount of people in basketball media, recognize LeBron's decision as the first big thing of player empowerment. LeBron, he was losing in Cleveland. They didn't build a good team around him. So he left and went to Miami, joined Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. They won championships. And boom. A lot of people hated that team and hated LeBron because of the decision he made. But that's player empowerment starting to go up. And then Kevin Durant, 2016. They lost in the conference finals. And this is even bigger representation of player empowerment because now Kevin Durant, he has a good team around him. He has Russell Westbrook, Serge Ibaka. He has Steven Adams. He has like a good supporting cast, and they made it to the conference finals. They almost made the finals. They had a 3-1 lead on the Warriors, but still Kevin Durant leaves and decides to go to Golden State. And that's another situation where player empowerment, where players are deciding to make their own decisions for themselves, not to be tied up to one team so much. And then we see the James Harden situation, as I just mentioned, where he forced his way out of Houston, he forced his way out of Brooklyn. And then even up until this season, where really recently, players, when they request trades, specifically Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, and James Harden, those are the three examples I'm going to use most. Because when Kevin Durant, last year around this time, Kevin Durant requested a trade out of Brooklyn. And he said his main choice was to go to the Phoenix Suns. And everybody was like, oh, what? KD and Phoenix? And then after a while, trade talks died down. They couldn't get a deal done. And then boom, middle of the season, he gets sent to Phoenix for Mikal Bridges, Cam Johnson, and some first-round picks. And that's another situation where player empowerment comes into play. Kevin Durant did not want to be in Brooklyn no more, so he asked to be traded. He told the team where exactly he wanted to be traded. And at first, it was hard for them to get a deal done, but eventually they got it done. And then this offseason, Damian Lillard. I'm going to make another video about this because this is one of the most annoying situations. Damian Lillard, finally, the most loyal guy in the NBA, finally gets tired of it, finally decides to make a trade, or to request a trade, and get out of Portland. And he tells the team, like all these other players have, or really just KD, but you get the point. He tells the team, I want to go to Miami most of all, but I wouldn't mind Brooklyn. So he has two main options. But his main choice is Miami. He says, I really want to go to Miami. You see the Jimmy Butler trolling with all the Miami posts and everything. You see all the signs with, Jimmy Butler and Dame teaming up, Dame going to Miami, and everything. Everybody's like ready for the trade. But it's been, 2-3 months since he requested the trade, and they still haven't got a deal done. And at this point, you're wondering what's going to happen with that Portland team, because they drafted Scoot Henderson in the draft. I'm going to make a whole other video about this, so I shouldn't get too much into it. My point is, Damian Lillard gave his specific team that he wanted to go to, and now when he does that, when he makes that known, all the other teams who are thinking, I might want a Damian Lillard, like let's say, I don't know, a random team, the Raptors, just for example, they said, I want Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard would be kind of cool to have on the team, you know what I'm saying? He's Damian Lillard. But Dame only wants to go to Miami. So now you're worrying, oh, if Dame comes to Toronto, will he really play for Toronto? What if he doesn't really want to be here? What if he just decides to sit out the whole time? So now other teams like Toronto, like maybe the Clippers, like maybe other teams that would have wanted Dame are kind of sitting out of trade talks because they don't want to give up too much for a player who won't even play, who won't be enthusiastic to play for the team. Enthusiastic is a crazy word, but you get my point. The whole player empowerment movement is great for players to decide what they want to do, have more control over their careers. But at the same time, it does put teams realistically in tough spots. It's kind of rough because Dame only wants to go to Miami. And if you can't get a deal done with Miami, because it doesn't make sense to trade for Tyler Hero, you already got like 1 million guards on your team. What are you going to do then? Keep Dame and Scoot on the same team? Then now maybe stunt Scoot's growth. Because now Scoot is, man, it puts teams in a rough spot. And it puts players in a rough spot as well. Because now not as many teams want them. So it's going to be interesting what happens with James Harden, what happens with Damian Lillard. We'll see what happens. And I'm sure whatever team they get traded to, or at least for Damian Lillard, if he gets traded to the Raptors, he'll play for the Raptors. But James Harden, I don't know, because we've seen what James Harden's done to get his way out of organizations before. So you never know. With the player empowerment movement, anything is possible, really. You never know what's going to happen. These players have the opportunity to make their own decisions. And we'll see what happens. But it's interesting, man. It's definitely interesting.